Hi everyone, today we're going to do a crayon resist project. I hope you have watercolors at home. This makes this one much easier. If you don't and you have markers and you can use plain water to spread them with a brush or a Q-tip, that would work. But if you only have crayons or colored pencils, that's fine. Just make do with what you have. We did these koi here, they're just big goldfish. And I'm going to give you a quick drawing lesson on how to make them. And then we used white crayon. You can see some of that white crayon in there. And the paint does not stick to anywhere, or even if you're using the marker, it won't stick to the crayon part. It's only going to stick to the paper. So we call this a crayon resist. Now this one you don't see as much because I did much more color blending and much more crayon inside the fish, but you can still see the white circles, and that's some blue and green in there together. This is a white koi. Most koi fish are white. So this was colored in completely with white crayon first, and then the spots were added. Now that it's dry, I can add in some black spots too. Lots of them have black spots. But if I'm going to add super dark colors like purple or black or brown, I want to wait until the end, like I did with his eyes. I want to finish those off at the end so that I can be very careful about where the color goes. And then finally, these were white fish where you can see some of the white was not colored in. It's hard to do a whole fish. You have to sort of turn the paper to see the sheen of the crayon, and it's hard to keep track of where you were. But I think it looks really neat where it stuck to the paper where I didn't hit it with the crayon. No crayon rubbing at all in those areas in there. And I still think it looks nice because they are underwater. So we're going to do, you can do these little swirls or targets like this where they come to the surface with the white crayon or any color crayon that you want. And I'll show you how to add in a lily pad if you like, and you can have one or two or maybe even more. It can be any color that you want. You can take a look at koi online and see if you want to make one that's real colors or just some fun colors. And we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so with our fish, you can make them this way or this way, it doesn't matter. What we're going to do is we're basically going to draw sort of like a long oval, but we need to put a bend in it. And we want to keep him pretty small in case you want to put two on here. So if I want to make him a nice size where I could maybe have a friend with him, I want to go ahead and make sort of like an oval, but you want to watch here. I want to go ahead and I'm going to make him move sort of like a fish would be moving. I'm going to give him a little tail area there. And I sort of want to go ahead and make it move. So it's not really an oval. It's sort of got a bend in it. Now here at the end would be his head. And I'm going to go ahead and make a special area for that. And with koi, they sort of have mustaches on the end or like kissy kind of lips. So I'm going to draw a little line here close to the end of his face. And I'm going to draw a little whisker or a mustache like our fall leaves. And like our fall leaves project, we want it to point toward the end. And I can just go ahead and make little lips if I want. I'm going to go ahead and draw an oval over here for an eye and another oval here for another eye. Now on koi fish, this end actually gets pretty pointy. So you can do that if you want to. But what I want to do is draw just like I did my fall leaves. I want to draw a nice big leaf out here and a nice big leaf out here. Now they need to connect to the body, not be added onto the end, because if they didn't, they'd fall off. I want to draw a nice big fall leaf over here and on the other side. And make sure that those are attached to the body. Now koi also have some little fins sticking out here. I'm going to skip those for now. I want a basic fish. And then if I want to go ahead and do another one, I can flip over my page and maybe he'll be a little one over here. So I can draw that same body. I'm just going to make it move just a little so that it looks like a moving fish. Head, eyes, whiskers. So he has a mustache and fins. So they can look like shark fins. They can look like mermaid tails. whatever you want to do. I just like the fall leaves to sort of look at. And it's okay if he goes off the page a little bit because these guys are friends and they're going in the same direction. So let's say you got some really skinny ends on your tails, that's fine. Okay, but you definitely want to have the whiskers and the fins. And if they move off the page a little bit, that's fine too. So if you just have one fish, that's great. And then we're going to add some things on there to make him a little more interesting. And look at all the different ways that we can color this in. Now, you could use crayons, colored pencils, or markers. If you have watercolors, that'll be great. And just do the trick with the markers and the watercolor paint again today, which is called a crayon resist. If you don't worry about it. Just use what you have. Okay, so a couple of things we want to add. Let's add in a couple of lily pads. Now I'm doing my project in crayon, and most koi tend to be white with orange spots on them. Then go all the way up to the head. If you're going to do white and you have a white crayon, do that first. You go all the way over his head and into his whiskers. Okay, so I've got my white underneath, all over his fins, and I can see that I got the whole thing down because when I move the paper up and down a little bit, I can see a sheen. And I also drew some swirls and stuff in the areas near him. Now he's got a lily pad, and I'm going to show you how to do one. They don't have to be on the page, they can be coming off. So it's kind of like a pizza with a bite cut out of it, like you took a piece out of the box. So I'm going to go around in a circle. And they can be big, they can be small. But when I get close to closing up that circle, I want to take a bite out of it. And then when I color them in, remember that if you only have crayons or markers, you can go ahead and color it in all the way. But if you have crayons and markers, you can fill this in with the water or watercolor paint. Now, since watercolor, when you get it wet with plain water, works like watercolor paint, I'm going to use my watercolors to be faster. But I just want to remind you that when we did our other projects with our coloring techniques, if I want to make him orange, maybe you want him to be purple. But if I want him to be orange, I can fill in some of this with watercolor or marker if I know how to use the wet marker effect. Remember that everything needs to be done before you start getting your paper wet. It needs to be thick paper. If you just use thin paper, it won't work. So if I'm doing this and I want to color in most of my fish, just have a little bit of color showing through, I want to blend it with some other colors and make it look nice. More fluid, it makes it a little more interesting because I can use a nice soft touch and come back. I don't have to go smashing my crayon down. I got a nice darker line right there just from adding more color. I don't have to push really hard. And I can add in some little U shapes for scales if I want. Make sure they're going away from his head. So I'm going to go ahead and add some more lily pads and finish this off. Now I'm going to add my color in here with watercolors. If you only have crayons, you need to fill in your whole paper. If you are using markers, just be very careful for when you add water to your marker areas. So if we're going to add marker, we want to just do it gently, do a little bit at a time, very, very little water on our brush so that we can keep on going and not have a mess on our hands. All right, here we are in crayon. I've got some white swirls underneath here too. And if I want to add some color to my fish with the markers and do the watercolor method, I just want to add in some and very little water, plain water on a brush and spread it. And it will fill it in and it looks very nice. And it will not go on the crayon part. So once you've started using marker, you can't go back and do the crayon once you're getting it wet. You're going to make your paper way too weak. But we can even do that all the way across the fish and blend some colors together. Now, don't use super dark colors that you're going to use for outlining, like on his eyes and stuff, until the very end. Because if you start blending it in with black now, and it smudges and smears, there's nothing you can do. You're kind of stuck. You could come back and draw over it later, but just make sure that your paper is completely dry before you try to do anything like that. So that's great with that. I'm going to go ahead and use watercolors because it's faster so that you can see how this finishes up. And I'm going to go ahead and color with some blue. And it's going to go right over, there's my white crayon and my blue crayon. So I want to color in the rest of my fish, either with markers or watercolor paint if I have it, and put in some more green in my lily pads. And same thing with our white fish. I don't want to use too much water. I'm adding a little more water here than I should. But here we go, right over our white crayon. So it sticks to the paper. So if you have a white crayon, it's really great. Let's put it closer to the fish that we painted white. I get a little blue on the fish, but that's cool because he's in the water. But it probably won't stick much because it doesn't want to attach to the wax that's inside the crayon. All right, so here are our final results on our fish. Now these are the ones that were painted white first. And you can see I did a much better job here on my orange guy. Now, most koi are actually orange with black spots, but I want to wait for my paper to be dry before I add those in and fill in his eyes. So I did my background, it's sort of a bluish green since koi's usually live in ponds. And then I added some yellow crayon in here to my lily pad. And when you get up close, you can see how it just stuck to only the paper. And these were some all white fish that I had done, but you can see I missed some spots and it stuck to the paper in here inside the crayon, but I think it still looks really good. And so I'm going to leave those like that. If you really hate it, you could probably try to get it with a paper towel if you wanted to. And the same thing with these. Now these crayon fish here were filled all the way in. So nothing really stuck much at all except on the paper. I tried to still be careful going around them, but I couldn't even paint on the inside. And this one is probably my favorite one here. This one has lots of swirls. They're blue and white, so you can get really cool effects with just the blue crayon on the paper background. Just make sure it's good, thick paper. And I didn't fill in my lily pads too much, so the marker and the watercolor paint really stuck to the paper nicely. And so I painted the inside orange and had a little red and put in a little yellow with the markers, getting them wet for watercolor effect. And then I added some watercolor paint as well. So either one works great. And now that my paper is just about dry, I can go ahead and finish off anything I like. Do I want to add some more scales? Do I want to outline my fish in my different colors? This would be the time that I can add in those super dark colors. So when you have purple and a black and a brown, and even a gray, something that's going to have a darker pigment in it, you probably want to wait until your paper is completely dry to do those. If you really want them to stand out, marker or even a thin pen might look really good. If you have colored pens, that'd be fun. But I kind of like these the way that they are. If I really wanted to come back in here and outline my edges, I can do that. It'll look nice and it'll really stick out. Now I can do where that head is and stuff. That would be really nice to do, to add in just a little bit more effect now that my paper's dry. So have fun with your project and experiment with those colors. If you're not returning to school next week when we start doing the hybrid model, watercolors will probably save you a lot of time and be more fun. I just get mine at the dollar store and they work great. And there's also some homemade recipes on how to make them with usual kitchen ingredients. If you're interested in the recipe, let me know. I will send it to you. And have a great time with your project. And you could have one fish, you could have a bunch of fish. You can skip the lily pads, you can add the swirls. So do whatever you like in there. And I can't wait to see what you create. Have a great day.